So next we have Kristen Miskelly, who is the owner of Satinflower Nurseries, and she's going to talk about native seed production to encourage seed-based restoration on southern Vancouver Island from a small business perspective. So Kristen, I see you've already shared your screen, so thank you so
Yeah,
much. And
thank
you
you,
can
Sarah.
start, yeah,
Thanks
whenever you're
so
ready.
much. And to the whole IE team, of course, and Alexis for her incredible work that we have just all benefited from. And to Tom and Dondi, that presentation was amazing. I'm so inspired by everyone's work. And I think that's really what this conference is about inspiring and uplifting each other. So speaking of which, I have certainly been uplifted by our colleagues south of us through the States tremendously for the work we do in Canada related to native seed production in with prairie oak ecosystems of southern Vancouver Island. So my name is Kristen Miskelly, and I am a co-owner of Satinflower Nurseries, a native plant nursery and consulting business that is based out of the Victoria area of southern Vancouver Island of British Columbia. I'm calling from Metchosin today, or presenting from Metchosin. Metchosin is Chanu First Nation territory and also shared with Syilx First Nation. The Victoria area includes Lekwungen speaking peoples of the Esquimalt and Songhees First Nations. We're just so grateful for the work we can do on those territories, as well as the territories of the Wasanich nations. And the Wasanich peoples includes 5 different nations, Pocochin, Sayote, Sartlip, Sakem, and Malahat First Nations. And we also do some growing in Cobble Hill of Malahat and Cowichan tribes. And we'll come back to some of these community relationships as we move through this presentation, but to initially start with a moment of gratitude there for the relationships that we're building in these territories with the plants and the people. And native plants, that is, at the core of working with Indigenous plant species and with the work we're doing as a nursery to inspire and empower people to connect with nature through native plants. And yes, we really like plants, and that's really been the core of what's driven the work that we're doing. James, in a photo together with us in the bottom right there, James and I started the nursery in 2013, and who would have known where it would have gone? We just sort of couldn't help but start a native plant nursery, and now we work with a team of 10 people, or sorry, 11. There's 6 folks who are part-time and 5 that are full-time, and then hundreds, if not thousands, of relationships with others. And that's really what is the machine behind the nursery. We have kind of 3 tiers of the nursery. One is potted plants, where we have 2 locations that people can come by, anyone, 5 days a week, 9 to 4, and with knowledgeable staff there waiting to help. We also do a lot of education, which I'll talk to you about in a little bit, and native seeds, of course, which is bringing us here today. And I'll just flip here. We are growing currently about 200 different native species, but it does fluctuate year to year. We're starting pretty well everything from seed, a little bit from cuttings here and there. We do our growing without herbicides, pesticides, or chemical fertilizers. And with native seeds, when we started native seed production, James and I are both biologists, and with native seeds, there weren't any available in our region other than a couple seed packets here and there of just like maybe 5-ish species or something like that in very small quantities. And we quickly realized to embark on larger restoration projects, we were going to need seed and need more plants. And so that got us started into thinking about starting the Vancouver Island's first larger scale native seed production of native seed. And so inspired by the ecosystems around us, including prairie oak ecosystems, Garry oak ecosystems, dry coastal Douglas fir ecosystems. I will point out when I'm saying Garry oak ecosystems, that's our Canadian way of saying prairie oak. We're part of an ecoregion along with the rest of us in the Willamette Valley, Puget Trough, Georgia Basin ecoregion extending south to the Willamette Valley of Oregon. And we have a lot in common, but as with any place you visit or come to know, the unique differences that you do see. And one of the most obvious differences with Southern Vancouver Island is the amount of exposed bedrock as an example. And so we just see different interactions, different plant communities, and though there are, of course, a lot of similarities. And as with the prairie oak ecosystems extending south of us, we are part of an ecocultural ecosystems where people and plants have been co-evolving and working together since time immemorial. And working with Indigenous plants is an ongoing learning process about how to approach our growing of native plants with as much respect as possible. And some of the areas that we focus on are recognizing that as a business, there is the potential for doing a poor job of this essentially commodifying these plants that are considered plant relatives, that are important culturally, spiritually, as medicine plants, food plants, and trying to do our best on a day-to-day basis, and never being apathetic to this, that we are trying to do our best as settlers who own a business, who are growing and selling native plants. And so projects that we work on and collaborations is an ongoing process of making sure to do the best job we can regarding that. Speaking of inspirations, I had mentioned, of course, being part of this broader ecoregion, but in our early years of starting the nursery, and even the kind of the years before, going to the CPOP conferences, there's James and Dave Hayes up here just before we opened the nursery at Scatter Creek. We spend a lot of time in the South Sound prairies. We go to workshops, we're we'll do our best we can with CPOP, visiting Violet Prairie, Heritage Seedlings, always looking to work of our colleagues south. And sometimes we even have friends who come visit us, like Peter Dunwoody and Ed Elverson have come up and spent time with us doing all sorts of things. And we always joke that Peter was the only one who wasn't sporting the Canadian plaid. So with regards to seed production, right now we're doing an acre of seed production. We have very arid summers here, so we actually have the driest average summer temperatures in all of Canada in the Victoria area, but we do minimize watering almost to the point of there's no watering in the seed fields. It's quite close to that. We don't have any drip. And really the only time we're doing any watering is if we do a late planting of a plant and then are watering it in. And as I mentioned, no pesticides, herbicides, or fertilizers. And I understand relatively, this is like really kind of like baby steps into native seed propagation, but we are the first to do it in the region. And so there's this sort of element of kind of starting from scratch and trying to figure it out. And right now we're producing about 30 kilograms a year across a variety of species. And I'll talk about the sites a little bit. And these are just photos to cherish of the beauty of these indigenous plant species, even grown for production, the sort of ecological benefits they yield, just watching pollinators going to the fields, and of course all of the education around them and learning about them in that setting. And we see the seed fields as a living genetic library. We're celebrating these ancient relationships and lineages. And really, it's about celebrating our local biodiversity and not taking it for granted, and seeing that as we conserve our local biodiversity, we are in essence conserving global biodiversity. And this group here today for this conference, that's really what we're all doing, working together to do that. And we collect for each, so here's an example with common camas, collecting from small bits of seed from a bunch of different sites that feeds into a larger population, and that's what we're growing from. And other talks will go into, about refreshing genetics and that sort of thing. But of course, we're mindful of that when collecting, and being mindful of things like outcrossing depression, inbreeding depression, all that kind of stuff in our cultivation of native seeds. In 2015, we started a half-acre in Cobble Hill, Cowichan Tribes and Malahat First Nations territory, where we took this is after some work had been done here, but this was a broom field. So many of you will be familiar with Cetaceous scoparius. And so in this site, we did start with tilling the site. We don't till ongoingly, but we did prep this site with tilling to try to get rid of the seed bank, and of course, like hand removal of broom as well. We mapped out what species we were going to plant, and deer could access this site. So we were careful about our species selection here too, and we went heavily on graminoids. So the sedges, rushes, and grasses, and some of the deer-resistant forbs, like a lot of them are in the aromatic kind of Asteraceae group, like woolly sunflower and yarrow, and there's others here as well. And then we did a variety of site prep and different types of things. Our seed row ahead of this one, we didn't use any landscape cloth. And in this one, we did do some because of minimizing maintenance, because the location is actually away from us. We trialed some solarization prep. So in solarization, we were affecting the upper layers of the seed bank, but then of course removing that plastic after to seed into. And many of you will be familiar with some of those kinds of basic site prep techniques, but also the fabric here. Well, I'll say what I was going to say in a moment. So we seeded some of our sites. So here's Elizabeth at the farm sowing in woolly sunflower. We also put some Castanea in there, so hemiparasitic species that formed connections with the woolly sunflower, and you can see the broom in the background there of the neighboring property. So it gives you an idea of the contrast. Here's Xanthonia californica being planted in from plug. So we do plant plugs in as well. And sea blush, and this is what I wanted to say regarding the landscape fabric. So sometimes the landscape fabric also has utility around the collection itself. I saw that question in the chat about why you might use something like landscape fabric, and there's multiple uses or reasons why, but one of them is around that seed collection. So with Plectridis congesta, we use a small shop vac, and the seed, as it falls onto here, we're able to collect it even if we're not there the day it falls, kind of thing. And just some images from that seed field. You can see species like Caleria macrantha or June grass, Romer's fescue. So this is Festuca romeri, named after Hans Romer, that lives near here. Cerastium arvense, Clarkia amoena. So for many of you in the prairie oak world, all these species will be super familiar. So in terms of applications of our native species, I had mentioned, when we started the nursery in 2013, you couldn't get a seed mix here. There was no such thing. And so our motivations about the native seed were to help to like facilitate those projects and to continue in a deeper way on the projects we were already working on. And something that has just absolutely like taken hold of me is trying to convert lawn to meadow and getting momentum around that through the southern Vancouver Island region. So some of our seed mixes were helping to educate and replace lawns. Septic fields we've been working on. These are often excellent opportunities for planting species that are herbaceous and are suitable to septic fields, many of which start as sort of these de novo sites that are ready for seeding when the soil or sand are bare after they've been installed. Green roof areas are fantastic candidates for prairie oak species as well, with the typically shallow soils and generally minimal vegetation, although green roofs are highly variable, of course, in how they're approached. And then we do a lot of work in highly urbanized sites as well. So here is, this is Saanich Peninsula near Victoria. This is Sayout territory at Neathwa Child and Family Services. So we partner with Sayout and the folks at Neathwa on garden spaces, but using a combination of planting and seeding, even in these small, highly fragmented patches, can be extremely rewarding, both from, just a community aspect, but also watching different wildlife using spaces like this is amazing. And we need more of this continuity and connectivity, even in highly urbanized spaces. And we see some really, degraded sites that can be transformed into healthier habitat over a short term. So these pictures are just a season apart. And so that's the year before and there's the year after. And we did plant some, you can tell about planting mature camas bulbs, but the Western buttercups and grasses and sea blush are within the year. And there are local larger sites that we're working on with seed mixes. So here we're sowing, this is an acre with Andrew McDougall from University of Guelph at the Cowichan Oak Preserve. Some of you might know that site as it's a very special site here in Cowichan Tribes territory, and dividing our seed mix into 1/3 of an acre each to help with the distribution of the seed. And lots of you with the techniques around seeding will be familiar with diluting seed before you're mixing it and things like that. This is also with Cowichan Oak Preserve and trialing. So this photo is actually from 2013, 2014, but trialing different types of blends, ratios and densities, and examining those kinds of things. Partnerships are vital to all the work we do. We enjoyed working with Pollinator Partnership Canada and Peninsula Stream Society on this BC Hydro parcel. I see, these underutilized land opportunities are just everywhere. And I sure hope we'll be working on many projects like this long into the future. And these are just more sites like this. And this little vernal pool we created here, that's a perfect example of something we learned from visits south of us, where we saw restoration practitioners creating vernal pool areas, and we mimicked a lot of those activities. So we dug down into the clay. This is Plagiobothris figuratus that friends in the South Sound prairies sent up to help us out. So the tons of opportunities like that. So our seeds are sown, or not sown, sold in individual packets. And on our website, you can, select what packets you would like. We also sell them in bulk volumes. So we do that at a cost per gram, and then you just purchase X number of grams. And then we also do pre-designed blends, like you're seeing to the bottom right here. So helping people out who might not want a customized blend, but just something that's predetermined for them. So like pollinator blend or wetland blend, that sort of thing. And of course, we do custom blends, and often those involve site visits, and then we're letting people know what might be best for their site. Some blends we're putting into, with a target organism in mind, like our Julia's orange tip here with the Brassicaceae plants that they rely on to complete their life cycle. So the butterflies lay eggs, caterpillars eat these plants and rely on them. And there's education we put around when we're putting these things out. And a lot of that is about those connections between wildlife and the plants. The Hyam project with Squallow and Botanicals, Lee Joseph, working with community. In this project, we're in our 4th year this year, but we provide seeds to community directly, and that it's an amazing project, but I don't have time. I saw the 5-minute mark there, so I'm gonna just try to move through a little bit. With Pollinator Partnership Canada, we do some blends where we're donating back into pollinator conservation, and education is such a huge part. So we do 2 major programs annually. One is Meadow Makers, where we do field trips, in-person sessions, workshops over a course of months, teaching about making meadows and restoration and native seed. And we also last year started the Native Seed and Growing Project, which included a number of field trips and virtual and online classroom. And last year we partnered with Parks Canada on that. And these programs, people are super interested. We've had a couple hundred people do Meadow Makers, and in 1 year of the Native Seed and Growing Project, 200 people signed up for our first session. We've created a native seed library online, starting to take seeds of the different species, a cotyledon catalog to help people out with what their little seedlings look like when they come up, and different kinds of educational tools. So quickly, where we're going in the future. Of recent, in the last few years, we previously we were leasing land. We were able to buy a parcel of land to help secure the work we're doing. We converted this shop, so we had never had any indoor space before. So this is momentous for our team, is to have some indoor space for our seed and gathering space. So this is what it looked like before. This is now. Seed, we never, seed holding area cleaning, that sort of thing. So that's the before with the blackberries and dirt, and now. And just look at seed packing and storage. And the seed field that we're creating now. So this is a new seed field in Metchosin, beautiful Metchosin. And I like to call it the slow seed movement. And as Linda Boyer says, no tech, low tech, and old tech. And this is what those photos tell us. So here's James still hand sowing our crazy bags of seed, and we hand collect and have some pretty old school equipment. This piece is thanks to farmer Shelley from Halliburton Farm, where our Saanich location is. And I'll just say, I just have two things here, and I know I must be out of time, I guess. I have 1 minute, thank you. Some of the limitations that we see, so we're so happy people are like passionate about native seed. We are too, but it is heartbreaking to see that the demand is exceeding production and we can't keep up with it. And we feel bad about it. We have a lot of emails and inquiries where we're like, we're sold out, you're gonna have to wait, all that kind of stuff. And land access and costs combined with capacity limitations is challenging. Certainly the capacity is a big thing. It's one thing to just say, oh, like here's the land, but building that capacity strategically and slowly through time is a complicated issue. We see a disconnect between the labor required for native seed and the pricing in how much seed costs and what is actually required between the land, packaging, cleaning, storage, all of that stuff. And then you're trying to sell like this like little packet of seed for like $5 or whatever. And in our nursery, so we are a business, but with these issues related to economy of scale, we want to scale up, but community connections is super important. And that takes a huge amount of time and our labor force to be able to do that. So some of the things that slow us down with scaling up are that we do sell small volumes of seed to many people instead of just selling bulk volumes. We do education. We have regular open hours. So we're open, 40 hours a week where people can just come in, and it's a beautiful thing, but the time intensity and cost associated with that is present. And we also grow without herbicides. And so our pressures to weed are high. So in the future, we're looking to try to get ourselves in a position for more help with cleaning seed and find a way to make that financially sustainable. We want to improve our seed storage, cleaning infrastructure and equipment. We want to grow more species, increase production, support the demand we already see, encourage larger scale restoration, do more seed related education, embark on more research-oriented goals that we've had for years and have been put on the back burner, and building partnerships. And thank you. I know I went a little bit over, so my apologies and thank you.
Kristen, thank you so much for that presentation. We have a couple of minutes for questions. I'll pull them from the Q&A box icon at the bottom of the Zoom screen, and please up-like them to move them to the top. So Kristen, our first question is, what kind of fertilizer do you use?
So we use a blend that a local nursery puts together that includes 10 organic ingredients. So things like dolomite and kelp meal are part of that blend, but we don't use like a chemical fertilizer. We don't add anything to seed fields though. This is just in our potted plant species. But if folks are interested in a list of what is in that blend, please email me. I'm happy to send that to you.
Thank you. Looks like we have time for one more question. Do you get a flush of more broom after tilling?
So broom has a long-lived seed bank. So certainly you see regeneration of broom in a seed bank over a longer period of time, but we have minimized the seedling pressure specifically in our seed field through the kind of mulching that we did with the landscape fabric. We have 2 different seed fields, and one has landscape fabric and one doesn't. And so the one where we had room issues is where we had made a decision to do our walking lanes and some of our forward production through the fabric.
That is all the time we have for questions now. Thank you again, Kristen.
Thank you.
Was
And can I just give a
incredible.
quick shout out? There's about 50 students from my Ecological Restoration 502 that are here, and I just want to say hi and to thank them for being here.
Thank you so much, Kristen. It's
Okay.
amazing to see those before and afters.